Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced his first batch of major projects after spending the summer reviewing pitches from Canada's premiers. On that list is the Darlington New Nuclear Project, located just east of Toronto.
At its full potential, Darlington's SMRs will provide enough electricity to reliably and safely power 1.2 million homes, more than the total number of households in Edmonton and Calgary combined.
So that one made it, but not all of Ontario's pitches were successful. So what does the province make of the first look at Carney's major projects plan? Stephen Lecce is the Ontario Minister of Energy and Mines, and he joins me now. Minister Lecce, it's good to see you again, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So the Darlington Nuclear Project was on the list, but not everything Premier Ford was pitching when they all gathered in Huntsville. What was your reaction to what we saw from the Prime Minister yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is a good first step, but it still requires a significant amount of focus, investment, and attention of the federal government. I mean, we represent almost half of Canada's GDP, and we have a long-standing, wish list to the federal government to partner with us to become an energy superpower. You cannot do that unless we invest in the next generation of large-scale nuclear. Ontario is not just building, yes, the first small modular reactor in the G7, ahead of the Brits and the Americans and the French and the Japanese. We're proud of that, flexing our muscles, Canadians building a project that can create 18,000 Canadian jobs and add over almost $40 billion to the Canadian economy. But we also need to invest in the large scale, where we're going to get the greatest yield. We're talking about building the largest nuclear generator on Earth in Port Hope, east of Toronto, 10,000 megawatts, $235 billion to our GDP, and upwards of 10,000 jobs to create, to build it. So we really are insisting to the federal governments to work with us to prioritize this project.
Right.
As well in the next tranche, because there's some elements that are missing, including the Ring of Fire, David, that's really important to building a clean energy economy. You can't do that unless we end some of the duplicative assessment and we build the roads.
Okay,
which is why we're asking for their support.
Okay, I want to get to the Ring of Fire in a second because there was a reference to that and other critical mineral projects yesterday. But the large-scale nuclear project that you're envisioning there, I mean, is that far enough advanced in its planning and its financing and to be at this stage where it makes it onto the list?
Well, we've been able to lay out a plan to build up to 10,000 megawatts. I mean, we've set in motion a protocol. We're consulting locally, First Nations. We've got support resolutions of the local community. I mean, there's a lot of progress being made. At the front end of this investment, we want the feds to support it. And that's why we're making the case that this allocation of the small modular reactor is a good step forward, but it's just not enough if we actually want to scale the ambition of energy exports, not just to the country, but to the world. And so when we're talking about the next generation of nuclear, we're also building Bruce C, a project that is already going through their assessments. That project represents upwards of 4,000 megawatts of power. Mm-hmm. So together, this is like the equivalency of almost taking all the power that's generated east of Ontario. It's that type of ambition, but we need the feds to back it. We also, of course, as you know, in our list, have made clear the importance of critical minerals, because the clean energy economy comes through minerals, and it's binary for the world. Either we're buying it from Canada, ethically sourced, or we're going to continue to buy it from the likes of China and the prize of the world, environmental, human rights, and labor. Right. And so we've really urged the feds to support us on ending the duplicative environmental assessment that they have imposed on that project, given that the First Nations are already leading their own assessment, and it's slowing us down. So it's not just about the money, David, although that's a big part of this. It's also about the regulatory environment. I mean, they've got to be a bit more nimble and realize the world has changed. It can't take 5 years to do an impact assessment when our peers in the G7 are doing it in 1 or 2 years.
Well, certainly the signal is that they want to move in that direction, right? And we will see, presumably by the Grey Cup, maybe something, because for some reason the Grey Cup has become the touchstone for this, something on critical minerals in that second wave. But just on the Darlington project, you talked about how you're building it, how you're building it faster than other countries like France and the United Kingdom. So this was getting done. This was getting built. What changes now that it's been added to this first list and sent to the Major Projects Office? Because we talked to the proponent of the Saskatchewan mine that's been added to this list, and other than it being an honor to be nominated, there was no tangible change in their operations timeline or costs. What's the change here by being added to this major project list?
Yeah, it is true that the SMR project, the first one of 4, was already underway, under construction. Materially, what changed is that the federal government is going to become a participant in funding this build out and using some of their funding instruments and investment banks to help backstop first of its kind technology. The reality is we did take the initiative. We embraced the first movers advantage. The federal government does help to de-risk it, though, for ratepayers of Ontario, and that is
Right.
welcome.
Okay.
I mean, look, it's first of its kind, David. I mean, this is not,
Yep.
these are obviously, they have an element of risk, and I'm just being straight up with the people of Canada, but that's the case of any first of its kind. The benefit of being the first is that if this is going right as it is, we now could export it because Ontario owns the IP. Every time we sell one of these SMRs, we're building them in Poland, in Estonia, even for the largest public utility in America, we're building them for them. And the beauty here in Ontario is the supply chain. It's Ontario small, medium, and large businesses. They have so far $500 million of supply chain benefit.
Right.
So it is de-risking. But look, where we could probably be more aligned on the vision is let's work together at the front end of the large scale nuclear, because that's where we actually could be running in parallel and doing this at the early stages versus a midstream support from the feds.
Right.
I'd rather see this at the front end, even though the Ring of Fire roads, okay, that's past tense. They've already duplicated, but there's a way to course correct. They could end the duplication. They've signaled some intent on wanting to reduce duplicative assessments. They've committed to, as you know, in 2 budgets, a reform to the Impact Assessment Act, going from 5 to 2 years. That is good.
Yeah.
But now we need them to do it.
Yes.
Our message to Minister Hodgson and the feds is like, we need you to get on with now doing it in this calendar year, so that we can build.
Yes, the one project, one review promise from the election it would end this duplication. And look, they say they're going to do it. They say they think they can do it with C5 and with the substitution clause that exists in C69. But yes, it starts to need to be applied. But it is interesting that on the small modular reactor, look, you do take a risk by being an early adopter, but there is a tangible benefit in that by de-risking it, as you say, that guarantees that ratepayers won't have to bear the cost, right, on this. So that helps them there. But going back to the Ring of Fire, I know there are still challenges with this. I understand the mineral potential of it. There's also the carbon sink that the peat bogs in that region create and the environmental risk of disturbing them. And of course, some unsettled and unresolved Indigenous concerns about developments there. But the Prime Minister did signal this as part of the critical minerals component yesterday, signaling that this is that next wave and that there could be something between now and the middle of November when presumably they'll all be at the football game together in Winnipeg. So what do you expect to see on this, Minister, between now and then on this? Because it is a core part of their economic development plan and obviously a core part of yours.
Yeah, I think there's broad level alignment on the aspiration to unlock the potential. It just comes down to the timing and the critical path and the sense, the bias of action of the feds. I mean, I think we both agree on the objective. It's just what's the process to achieve it. And that's why what we're asking for is really 3 things. One is an investment to help us build the all-season road. The second is the ending of the regional impact assessments, which, as I mentioned, is duplicative. That's already being led by the First Nation leaders who are not only in support of the project, but who are leading the EA. And the third is the Impact Assessment Act, making sure that that gets reformed so that we can streamline, as you say, one project, one process. That is now the law of the land in Ontario. We took initiatives through our version of Bill 5 on mines that helps to cut our permitting timelines by 50%. We go from the second slowest in the OECD to among the fastest in the industrialized world. What we want from the feds is a clear action plan between now and then to do it. We don't want to lose another construction season here. Every year that passes, we are enabling the likes of China or Russia or other adversaries geopolitically to win. And I think given the threats from the US and given just rising unemployment, we saw StatsCan numbers a week Friday. I mean, we got to get on with this for the sake of Canada's economy and our workers. So look, we're going to work in good faith, the feds, as I think the Premier has done so far, but we're going to keep them accountable too. And we've got to see larger commitments to the province on the next list. First step, SMRs, big investment, welcome it. But I just would say it's just not enough. And we've shared this to the feds very objectively, saying, look, thank you with the big but. but there's got to be way more in order to backstop and really scale the level of ambition the PM speaks. I mean, he set an expectation for big nation building. Well, a $235 billion infusion to the Canadian economy to build the next gen of Canadian nuclear sounds like a way to do it. So we're going to keep the pressure on and obviously keep working with them in good faith because we're on the same team here against a common threat with the US.
Right.
We want to work together for the interests of Canadians.
Okay. Stephen Lecce, we appreciate you joining us, sir. That's Stephen Lecce, the Ontario Minister of Energy and Mines. Thank you.